Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I hope to read in the month of September 2024. And as always, I start with a pre-drafted list of about 19 books, and then I add in 5 books at the end of the video live from my alphabet challenge, picking up the backlist of my Kindle based on a random letter that I choose from the alphabet. And all of that adds up to 24 books that I hope to read each month in the year 2024. So I will start out with books I have from previous months as well, because one of the things I'm trying to do this year is finish the books that I assigned myself in previous months, and if I don't read them, they carry over. So for this month, I only have 3 of those books. The first one is called Scattered Minds. This is by Gabor Mate. The subtitle is The Origins and Healing of Attention Deficit Disorder. This is a book that I had out from my local library, and I was able to get through like the first part of it before I had to return it. And so I went ahead and put it on hold for audiobook. So when that comes in, I'll go ahead and wrap up that book. So this one is partially complete, but I don't have a copy in hand anymore. So I need to wait till I get that back. And then the other 2 books you have heard me talk about in previous videos, these are 2 fantasy novels, one of which has an audiobook coming out, the other of which has a second book in the series coming out. And so I've actually been intentionally holding off on reading these. So the first one is called The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzin. This is a book that has book 2 coming out a little bit later this year. And so I wanted to read them in pretty quick succession so I don't forget all the details from book 1. So I've been kind of holding off on reading that one. The second book is one called Heavenly Bodies. This is part of the Heavenly Bodies duo by Imani Aru. Now, the publication of this audiobook was supposed to be this fall, and it got shifted to January of 25. So this is one that I'm actually probably going to read in ebook form, just because I would like to cross it off my list this calendar year. So let's move on to the new books that I have on my list that I want to be reading in this month. The first is a book called, it's a nonfiction book called Laziness Does Not Exist by Devin Price. And this is an author that I previously read. Devin Price has another book, and let me see if I can quickly pull it up and remind myself of the title here. I believe it is called, yes, Unmasking Autism, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed. And this particular book, I think, is kind of taking on a mythology around what they call the laziness lie, which falsely tells us we are not working or learning hard enough. And I mean, who doesn't want to read a book on that? So I've added that to my list to take a look at. I also added to my list a book called Everything We Keep by Carrie Lonsdale. This is an author I do not think I've read before, and I was really just kind of sucked into the topic of this. I think that basically this is a book about a woman who has a fiance and he vanishes in a boating accident, and then I'm just reading through the description here. Basically, like when she delves deeper into his disappearance, like there's all these secrets that become unearthed. And this is definitely like a trope. There are other, like I would say, women's fiction books I've read with this trope, and I was into it. And so I have this on audio and I have it in ebook form. I also added to my list the second book in the Treasure State Wildcats series by Devney Perry called Blitz. And this is a book that is about characters that are kind of surrounding a football team in a college setting, if I'm remembering correctly. And I'm just looking really quickly. I think this is about a coach and a student who have a relationship with each other. There's a third book in this series that just came out, and so this is kind of why I added it to my list so I can stay caught up with that series as the new books are coming out. The next book that I added to my list is, I think, like a thriller mystery. It's called Some Choose Darkness by Charlie Donnelly. I've been working my way through Charlie Donnelly's backlist because there's always like some really fun twists and like character development in these particular thrillers. This one is about a forensic reconstructionist who sheds light on cold case homicides by piecing together crime scene details others fail to see. And when she's cleaning out her late father's law office a week after his burial, she receives a call that plunges her into a decades-old case come to life once more. There were 5 women who went missing in 1979 in Chicago, and there was a predator named the Thief. And I think this person was caught and they're about to be paroled for a murder. And I think she gets like pulled in some way that like there's new evidence basically like about this criminal. And so she's like pulled into the case. So I believe this is book 1 of a series of books. And I think I have the second one in the series on ebook as well. So I wanted to read the first one and see what I thought. Okay, my box set challenge for the month of September. I've been reading a box set of books that I already own every month this year. I had a lot of box sets to get through. And the one that I chose for this month is called The Wolves of Mercy Falls. This is a YA series that I have heard compared to Twilight. And so I was like, all right, like let's try this out. There's 4 books in the box set. The first book is described as there's a girl who's watched the wolves in the woods behind her house, and there's one particular wolf that she can't seem to live without. It's a chilling presence. Meanwhile, Sam has lived 2 lives: in winter, the frozen woods, the protection of the pack, and the silent company of a fearless girl. In summer, a few precious months of being human. So there's basically a wolf that's like shape-shifting back and forth between being a wolf and being a human. And so apparently as winter nears, Sam must fight to stay human or risk losing himself and Grace forever. So this sounds, I don't know, just fun. I mean, YA series can be really great. So the first book in the series is called Shiver. The second book in the series is called Linger. The third, Forever. And the fourth is called Sinner. So I'm going to try to get through all of those in this month. I also decided to pick up the first book in a series that I have just heard a ton of good things about, and it is called The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen. I've never read this author before, but this is one of those books that has just been like, social media talks about this all the time, and a lot of people recommend this book, and I've had it on my list for a while to just like try out and see what I think. So the general description of this one is there's a warrior princess trained in isolation, and it says she's driven by 2 certainties. The first is that the king of the Bridge Kingdom is her enemy, and the second is that she'll be the one to bring him to his knees. And it says that there's the only route through a storm-ravaged world. The Bridge Kingdom enriches itself and it deprives its rivals, including this main character's homeland. So when she's sent as a bride under the guise of peace, she's prepared to do whatever it takes to fracture its impenetrable defenses and the defenses of its king. Yet as she infiltrates her new home and gains a deeper understanding of the war to possess the bridge, she begins to question whether she's the hero or the villain. So this is a book that I'm just checking the series here. Looks like there's like 5 books in this series right now. And again, I've just heard really great things about this one. So I thought I would try that out and just see what I think. Okay, I also cannot hold back any longer. I had to put book 5 of the Boys of Men series on my list. So this book is called Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. If you've not watched my previous videos, this is a series about basically a group of teenagers in Ireland, and they have different romances across the series. The first 4 books in the series cover 2 different romances. Books 1 and 2 is one couple, books 3 and 4 is a second couple, and I have understood that book 5 is a standalone for a third couple that we have met earlier in the series. And I think this series is super fun. So I'm excited to pick up book 5. I don't know of the timeline of other books that are coming into this series. So hopefully there will be more because I've just loved it so far. All right, I also added to my list a book called The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a book that came in on audio hold from my library, and I have just seen everybody talking about it and loving it. I believe this might have been a Book of the Month Club pick as well. And so basically this is a mystery that takes place at a summer camp, and it says that there's a teenager who vanishes from a summer camp in 1975, and she's a 13-year-old, and she's the daughter of the family who owns the camp and employs most of the region's residents. And this isn't the first time a child from this family has disappeared. Her older brother similarly vanished 14 years ago, never to be found. As a panicked search begins, a thrilling drama unfolds, chasing down the layered secrets of the family and the blue-collar community working in its shadow. There's a multi-threaded story. So everyone I've seen reading this book has just like been completely enthralled by it. So I'm really excited to pick that up. Another nonfiction book that I added to my list is one called The Personal MBA, and this is by Josh Kaufman. This is a book that I've like picked at over the years. I actually recommend it to a lot of people who are just getting started with like forming a business, and I would like to just read the whole thing. I actually have this on audio. I also have a physical copy of this book, And what I love about it is it's basically kind of taking a lot of concepts that you might pick up at an MBA program and putting them into a book form and making it really digestible. So I'm excited to see, if there's anything that I kind of learned from this. It's really interesting, but also I like that it's like really easily digestible in small chapters, so I can be kind of like dipping in and out of it throughout the month. Okay, the next 3 books that I put on my list are a trilogy that I've also heard really good things about. And I figured once I started the first one, I would probably want to just go straight through. So I decided to put all 3 of these books on my list this month. And I feel like that's a little bit of a risk because you never know how I'm going to feel about these books. But again, like they've come very well recommended. So this is a series called The War of Lost Hearts by Carissa Broadbent. The first book is called Daughter of No Worlds. And I'm just going to focus on the description from the first book. And then I'll mention the titles of the other 2 books in the trilogy. So the first book, it says, a former slave fighting for justice, a reclusive warrior who no longer wants to believe it exists, and a dark magic that will entangle their fates. Ripped from a forgotten homeland as a child, the main character learned how to survive with nothing but a sharp wit and a touch of magic, but the night she tries to buy her freedom, she barely escapes with her life. Desperate to save the best friend she left behind, she journeys to the Orders, the most powerful organization of magic wielders in the world, but to join their ranks, she must complete an apprenticeship with, sounds like the male main character in the book, who is a handsome and reclusive fire wielder who despises the Orders. The Order's intentions are cryptic, and the female main character must prove herself under the threat of looming war, but even more dangerous are her growing feelings for the male main character. Let me see if I can try to pronounce these names. I think the female character's first name is Tisana, and then the male main character's first name is Maxentarius. So I'm going to try this out and see what I think. The second book in this series is called Children of Fallen Gods. And then the third book in the trilogy is called Mother of Dawn and Death. So again, have heard great things. I've read Carissa Broadbent in the past. And let me just remind myself what it is that I would have read by her. I can't always keep all of these authors straight. This is the author of The Serpent and the Wings of Night series, which I read earlier this year. So, and there's a third book in that series that's coming out, I think it's coming out very, very soon actually. So I'm going to try to pick that up as well in the coming months. But okay, so that's a trilogy I'm picking up. And then the last 4 books that I chose for this month, I had a list that I created early in the year of 24 books that I wanted to read in 2024. And it was actually more than 24 books because it included a bunch of series and trilogies and other kinds of things I wanted to read. So one of the trilogies that I put on that list that I wanted to revisit is the Shannara trilogy. And this is something that I think I read in like the 5th grade. I don't remember anything about it other than I really enjoyed it when I was a kid. And so I just thought it would be fun to pick it back up. So the first book in this series is called The Sword of Shannara. There's a second book called The Elfstones of Shannara. And then the third is The Wish Song of Shannara. And there's a ton of other books in this series, but this is considered the original trilogy. So I thought I would just revisit that to start. So let me give you the synopsis of the first book. It says, living in a peaceful, shady vale, Shay Omsford knew little of the troubles that plagued the rest of the world. Then the giant forbidden Alanon revealed that the supposedly dead warlock lord was plotting to destroy the world. The sole weapon against the power of darkness was the Sword of Shannara, which could only be used by a true heir of Shannara, Shay being the last of the bloodline upon whom all hope rested. Soon, a skull bearer, a dread minion of evil, flew into the Vale seeking to destroy Shay, and to save the Vale, Shay fled, drawing the skull bearer after him. Now, I will just say, as I'm reading this, and I'm kind of remembering a little bit about this. Does this sound a little bit like Tolkien? Of course it does. So if you're familiar with thinking about like Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and things like that, and this is probably maybe why I loved it so much, because I also loved The Hobbit when I was a kid as well. So I'm going to try to pick up those 3 and just refresh my memory about what they're even about. But I think that's going to be really fun. And then the last book that I've included on my predetermined list is one called The Will of the Many, which is the first book in the Hierarchy series by James Islington. And this is one, again, that I've heard really great things about. It is a dark academia book, and I want to try to get through this because I've tried to pick it up a couple of times. I have it on ebook and audio. And basically, this is about like an elite academy where a young fugitive uncovers layered mysteries and world-changing secrets. So he basically comes into this school, and it says that he tells them he was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led to his acceptance into this prestigious school. He'll gladly join the rest of civilized society and allowing his strength to do what they call will, which is like leached away, added to the power of those above me. Like there's kind of this magic system in this world. But basically he's there secretly to try to understand a murder and to solve a murder. And so he's like there on false pretenses, basically. And again, I've just heard so many people give this like really high ratings. And I'm just looking really quickly to see, looks like the second book in this series is supposed to be published in like spring of next year. So that's one I've had on my list for a long time. So I'd like to get to this one this year as well. So those are the books that I have predetermined on my September list. And now I'm going to open up my Kindle and get ready to look at my library here once I choose my random letter to see what I might want to pick up for the month. So let's pick a random letter first. Okay, so the letter I picked is the letter A. And now I'm just gonna go to the A books in my Kindle and see if there's anything that kind of stands out to me that I want to be reading in this next month. And what I like to do first is just kind of do a quick sweep to see like what's in the A's, especially if it's like a lot that's in there. And then I kind of circle back and decide what is it that I really want to be reading. I'm seeing a couple here that I'm already interested in. All right, so the first book that I'm gonna pick that's an A book for the month of September is one called All That We Never Were. And let me see, I'm picking this kind of based on the cover. I don't even know what it's really about, so let's take a look. It says, this is book 1 of 2 in a series. And it says there's a 19-year-old female main character, Leah. She used to love her life. Now she can barely get out of bed in the morning. Still shaken by the sudden loss of her parents, her 29-year-old brother is the only person she has left to keep her from falling into an emotional abyss. But as he prepares to move across the country for work, soon he'll be gone too, and she will have no one. And then Axel is her brother's best friend and the natural person to turn to. And seeing her so despondent is a punch to Axel's gut. At her brother's request, he drops everything to move Leah in with him and to meet her every need. He's determined to push her to her limits, to break down the walls she's built to protect her fragile heart. Little does he know, she has loved him forever, and now his love for her expands so much more. Okay, so this is a romance. I'm gonna add that to my list for September. Kind of looking for some lighter books, given everything else that I have on my list here. And some of these books, I just have no idea what they're about. So I'm gonna like pick a couple and look at the book details and see like if these are things that I might wanna add to my list here. So the one that I'm kind of looking at now is called Among the Lesser Gods. This is a novel by Margot Katz. I am not sure I know this author, but it does say that it's for fans of authors like Barbara Kingsolver and Leaf Anger, who I like both of those people. So the description says, Elena Alvarez is living a cursed life. From the deadly fire she accidentally set as a child to her mother's abandonment and now to an unwanted pregnancy, she knows better than most that small actions can have terrible consequences. Driven to the high mountains surrounding Leadville, Colorado by her latest bad decision, she's intent on putting off the future. Perhaps there she can just hide in her grandmother's isolated cabin and wait for anything to make her next choice for her. But instead of escape, she finds reminders of her own troubles reflected from every side, the recent widower and his 2 children adrift in a changed world, her own mysterious family history, and the interwoven lives within the town itself. I think this sounds great. I'm happy to pick up a novel, just kind of like literary fiction for this month. So I'm gonna add that to my list as well. I am also gonna pick up another book that looks like just also kind of like some lighter fiction. We'll see based on the description. It is called And Now You're Back by Jill Mansell. And this says, Dee Dee Lang met her first love, Shane Mason, on a magical winter visit to Venice. They were rapturously happy together, and she came to work, and Shay came to work at Dee Dee's parents' hotel in the Cotswolds. Then one shocking event changed everything, and Shay disappeared. For 13 years, no one expects to hear from him again. Then one day, out of the blue, he returns to fulfill his father's dying wish and moves into the best suite in Dee Dee's hotel, setting up a chain of events that affects the whole town. Okay, let's add that to the list as well. Another kind of like literary fiction-y, romancy book. All right, I need a couple more here. All right, the next book I'm gonna add is one called Abducted by T.R. Reagan. This is one that I have had for a while on my list. I bought it in like 2021, so it's been a little while. I don't think I've read this author before, but it is part of a series that is apparently a 1 million copy best-selling series. So it says, when Lizzie Gardner was only 17, what should have been the perfect night became the perfect nightmare. She was kidnapped just blocks from home and woke up to find herself at the mercy of a depraved serial killer. Imprisoned and tormented for months by a maniac she came to know as Spider-Man, she narrowly escapes and is the only one of his victims to survive. 14 years later, she's a private investigator who teaches self-defense. She does what she can to help others protect themselves and to forget the horror of her ordeal. But then she receives a phone call from a new special agent for the FBI with grim news. The killer has resurfaced and she is a new target. So this is one that's pretty highly rated and I've been wanting to read it for a while. So I'm going to add that to my list. Get another mystery in there for the month. And then let me just pick one more. The last book I'm going to pick is one that I have been recommended by a number of different people, and it's called The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. Subtitle is Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business. And one of my dear colleagues actually recommended this to me a while ago, and let me just do a quick read of the synopsis. I've been wanting to pick this up for a while. So it says, there is a competitive advantage out there, arguably more powerful than any other. Is it superior strategy, faster innovation, smarter employees? No. This best-selling author argues that the seminal difference between successful companies and mediocre ones has little to do with what they know and how smart they are, and more to do with how healthy they are. In this book, he brings together his vast experience and many of the themes cultivated in his other best-selling books and delivers a cohesive and comprehensive exploration of the unique advantage organizational health provides. I love that concept, so I'm excited to add that to my list. That's been one I've been wanting to read for a really long time. Okay, so I believe that is my 5 books that I'm adding to my list for September. Just checking here, I've got 5 A books, and I am really looking forward to this month. I've got some great series that I think are going to be super fun to dive into. And I also love to get into more of a fall reading vibe, and so really looking forward to heading into the rest of this calendar year and seeing what my reading piles will bring. So make sure to check out my next video to see what I was actually able to read this month. And until then, happy reading.